sky split open with the roar of engines, and the sons of the Emperor descended like fire given form. Thunder rolled across Ullanor's broken plains, where once the pride of ancient Xenos kingdoms had risen, only to be shattered beneath the hammer of human war. The air was thick with the acrid scent of promethium and ozone, war's bitter perfume, heralding a day to be carved in legend and blood. Beneath armor, gleaming gold and ceramite, the Legionis Astartes moved as one, a storm of power and faith. Their banners snapped like war cries, each sigil a history, a promise, a prayer. The War Master, Horus Lupercal, stood astride the ramparts of a war machine larger than some worlds, his silhouette a beacon in the gathering darkness. Around him, the Luna Wolves prepared to unleash fury, sons shaped by hardship and exalted glory, sworn to the unity of mankind and the will of the Emperor. The battle was no mere clash of armies. It was the turning of a great wheel, the fulcrum upon which the fate of 1,000 worlds would balance. From the eastern ridges, the thunder of Warhound Titans heralded the arrival of the Mechanicum's terrible engines, their armored fists set to crush resistance beneath unyielding iron. Behind the lines, the spires of Imperial battlecraft roared overhead in symphonies of destruction, casting long shadows of flame and steel across the scarred soil. Yet beneath the majesty and might, whispers of fracture stirred like a gathering storm. The seed of heresy was planted even as victory was claimed, sown in pride and ambition. The twilight hour of the Great Crusade was at hand, and at Ullanor, the once unshakable edifice of brotherhood through the Emperor's light began to tremble. Horus raised his blade, forged from the fires of 1,000 battles, and stained with the blood of enemies and kin alike. His voice rang out, a clarion call that thundered over the charge. Stop, for the Emperor, for mankind's glory. The legions surged forward with thunderous war cries, their souls aflame with faith and the unyielding will to triumph. The ground shook beneath the onslaught. The orc tide, a monstrous sea of brutish green savagery, crashed against the walls of faith and steel. Titans shattered their ranks like mountains colliding, while the Astartes carved through their ranks, relentless as the rising sun. Each blow struck with the weight of destiny, each death a sacrifice written with honor and sorrow. Among the fiercest were the sons of the Luna Wolves, swift, brutal, and inexorable. Their chain swords sang the hymns of war, their bolters roared blessings of flame. They fought not solely for victory, but for the memory they would leave etched in the annals of the Emperor's reign. Yet in their hearts, the War Master's shadow grew darker, a silent promise of a fate yet unspoken. The battle raged for hours that stretched into eternity, until the green tide broke and the fields of Ullanor lay buried beneath shattered weapons and fallen heroes. The Emperor's gaze, from his command throne, was grave, yet resolute. The victory was theirs, yet the cost was writ in the eyes of those who lived to see the dawn. And as the smoke faded, and the sons of mankind raised their banners high over the broken world, a cold truth whispered through the ashes. Even in triumph, shadows fall longest on the hearts of those who wield the light. The war cries of the Luna Wolves echoed like thunderclaps. A tempest unleashed upon the battered plains of Ullanor. As Horus led the charge from the prow of his colossal war machine, his presence was as a living storm, radiant and terrible, a beacon that drew warriors onward into the maelstrom. Beside him, the faithful sons of the Emperor moved as shadows and fire, each step a hammer blow upon the bones of the orc horde that dared defy the Great Crusade's inexorable advance. The ground shook with the advance of towering Imperator-class titans, their massive feet carving scars into the planet's bloodied skin. Their guns, like the great celestial cathedrals in motion, unleashed torrents of litanies in promethium and molten war metal. Each strike was a sermon of annihilation, a hymn to the Emperor's unassailable will. Beneath their gleaming plates, servitors and tech priests bent in silent worship, weaving the arcane rites of battle with a grim solemnity. Yet the enemy was unyielding. The orcs, foul brutes clad in scrap and fungus, surged like a plague upon the battlefield. Their howls were primal, filled with the rage of untamed beasts and the cruel joy of destruction. Green-skinned monstrosities, they cared not for strategy or honor, only for the carnage wrought in war's bitter chaos. The clash was titanic. Bolters spat storms of thunder. Chainswords sang maniacal dirges as they tore through flesh and ceramite. The warriors of the Luna Wolves fought as angels of vengeance, their bloodlust tempered by faith and a burning desire to bring mankind's enemies to heel. Among their blades danced the grace of the Primarch's teachings, a deadly ballet woven from years of hardship and victory. Horus's gaze swept the battlefield, sharp as the edge of his master-crafted blade. Every fallen brother was a wound upon his soul, every victory a step closer to a destiny shrouded in shadow and glory. There, amidst the maelstrom, the first whispers of doubt stirred, soft as a prayer, cold as a paradox. The triumph at Ullanor was the dawn of an era, but also the twilight of loyalty. As the last vestiges of resistance crumbled beneath the engines of war, Horus raised his blade high, the blood of heroes and monsters alike gleaming upon its edge. The legions roared their ascent, a sound that echoed to the very stars. The Emperor's light had triumphed, but it was a light that cast long, inscrutable shadows. In the days that followed, the banners of the Imperium were raised above Ullanor's shattered spires, proclaiming a hard-won victory to all who gazed upon them. But beneath the triumph was a silent reckoning, the cost of unity in a galaxy ablaze with ambition and betrayal. And as night fell over a world broken yet conquered, the echoes of Ullanor whispered eternal warnings that even gods might falter, and that the price of glory is often counted in the currency of souls. The ironclad legions pressed forward through shattered earth and rain of fire, their armor scarred but unyielding. Beneath their ceramite plates, hearts burned with the flame of purpose ordained by the master of mankind. The great fields of Ullanor, once fertile and proud, now lay gouged and twisted, a tomb for heroes and heathens alike. Yet in this wasteland, glory bloomed like fire amidst frost, born of sacrifice and steel. Horus moved through the tide of battle, as a god among mortals. His presence, a bulwark against despair. The great helm of the War Master bore the weight of prophecy and burden alike. His eyes, glowing beneath the visor's shadow, reflected not only the carnage around him, but the forge of destiny shaping every kill, every command, every whispered prayer. With each swing of his blade, Horus carved a path through the chaos, a path both radiant and portentous. The Luna wolves followed, brethren bound, not just by blood, but by iron faith in a future unspoiled by the darkness rising in secret. Their movements were precise and deadly, chain swords roaring like thunderclaps, bolters pealing sharp hymns. They fought with the fury of the Emperor's chosen, a storm of judgment unleashed. Yet even in their zeal, there flickered the faintest shadow of doubt, an unspoken question of what price victory demanded. Across the plains, towering warhound titans clashed with orc gargants, the very ground trembling beneath their colossal duels. Each titan's hydraulic growl was a prayer to the machine god, and the thundering punches they hurled were the divine wrath of mankind incarnate. Around them, tech marines wove rites of maintenance and war, their augmetics glowing with sacred sigils, ensuring the immortality of the iron behemoths. The orcs were a relentless tide of savagery, their grotesque cries and brutish laughter mingling with the screams of the dying. They knew no fear, no honor, only the endless drive to kill and survive. Their crude, towering war machines churned forward, challenged only by the unyielding discipline of the Imperium's warlords. Yet, beneath the surface of this brutal contest rumbled the deeper currents, the fractures that would rend brother from brother in the years to come. Amid the chaos, Rogel Dorn's imperial fists held the flank with stoic resolve, their shields like walls of adamantium against the green tide. Their silent vigilance bore witness to the true cost of war, walls built from the broken bodies of friends, broken promises whispered by the dying. They fought with grim determination, each man a bastion protecting not just Ullanor, but the fragile dream of mankind's unity. In the roiling struggle, Angren frothed with rage, his world-eaters a relentless scourge. They tore through orcs and allies alike, their madness barely contained beneath ceramite and fury. The tragedy of their brotherhood was writ large in every blood-drenched swing, a living testament to the shattered soul beneath the armor. Through it all, Horus's voice rang clear, a hymn of hope and doom intertwined. For the Emperor, for our future, he proclaimed, and the legions answered with thunderous fury. As daylight faded, the battlefield became a tableau of ruin and rebirth. The orc horde was broken, their banners trampled beneath the advance of mankind's might. Yet in the silence that followed the storm, there whispered cold shadows, omens of betrayal and fire yet to come. And beneath the ruined sky of Ullanor, the shattered echoes of brotherhood lingered, as eternal as the stars, as tragic as the fate that awaited them all. The first light of dawn crept across the shattered horizon, casting a cold, pale glow on the blood-soaked fields of Ullanor. In the stillness between clashes, the heavy breath of the war-weary mingled with the faint scent of burnt ceramite and scorched promethium. Somewhere a distant artillery battery cried out its last, a dying echo swallowed by the vast silence that fell like a shroud over the ravaged world. The war had been won, but at a price written in broken bones and forgotten prayers. Horus stood atop the prow of his war machine, the War Master's summit, and surveyed the twisted ruins with eyes as sharp as a raptor's talon. Around him, the banners of the Luna Wolves snapped in the bitter wind, their colors darkened by soot but unbowed. The battlefield lay strewn with the fallen, friend and foe alike, each a fragment of the grand design that tore the galaxy apart. The roar of engines had ceased, replaced by the whisper of mourning and the low rumble of mechanized servitors gathering the dead for rites seldom spoken aloud. Yet within Horus's breast burned a fire greater than the forge of war. Pride, faith, but also an inkling of shadows that gnawed beneath his triumph. His hand rested upon the pommel of his blade, the master-forged weapon that had sung through countless battles. The weight of command was not merely the bearing of victory, but the burden of destiny itself. He imagined the faces of his brothers, their hopes, their faith, and perhaps their fall. The triumph at Ullanor was a beacon to the Imperium, a shining testament to the Great Crusade's divine mandate. Yet in the whispers behind closed doors, unseen by light or star, there were murmurings of schism, of ambition too great for one man to bear. Horus felt these tremors, like fault lines deep beneath the foundations of all he held sacred. To the galaxy, he was the Emperor's chosen, the herald of mankind's dawn. But within, the seeds of doubt had been sown by forces older and darker than any Xenos horde. Beneath the shattered skies, the Imperial fists labored to hold the battered fortifications. Rogel Dorn, master of granite resolve, surveyed his domain with eyes that missed nothing. Every jagged tower, every ruined wall, was testament to the patience and suffering of his legion. Walls built not just to hold back the enemy, but to shield the fragile dreams of a united humanity. His silence was a hymn, his stern countenance a prayer for endurance. In the shadow of Ullanor's ruin, the World Eaters tore through the dying. Angron's fury was a living storm, his countless kills a dirge sung in iron and blood. Yet even as his warriors fueled their frenzy on carnage, there lurked a tragic truth beneath the slaughter. That madness and loyalty were tangled like serpents in his armored heart. Each swing of his brutal axe was a cry against the chaos within, a curse laid upon those who would see mankind broken. From the command deck of the Emperor's flagship, the master of mankind himself watched the unfolding dawn with a gaze that carried the weight of millennia. The victory was his, but so too were the fractures that it bore. Each life lost at Ullanor was a thread pulled in the great tapestry of the Imperium, a tapestry that might yet unravel in the hands of his sons. His silent thought was a solemn vow that his vision of unity would endure, no matter the cost, no matter the shadow. The triumph at Ullanor was both a dawn and a dusk, the glory of victory entwined forever with the echoing sorrow of a brotherhood soon to be broken. The banners rose, the galaxy watched, and the Imperium marched onward into the uncertain twilight of its own making. The aftermath of Ullanor's decisive victory cast a long, somber shadow over the victors. The stars above seemed to mourn in silence, bearing witness to the price paid in blood and broken bonds. The planet's surface was scarred like the soul of a warrior who had gone through fire and darkness, and yet survived, scarred, yet unbowed. Those who had fought amidst the collapsing mountains and shattered jungles bore their wounds in silence, their minds haunted by the echoes of carnage and the promise of what was to come. Horus moved among his warriors, proud but troubled, his armor slick with the blood of the enemy and sweat of exhaustion. His expression was unreadable beneath the visor of his helm, embodying both the triumph of his legions and the storm brewing within his own mind. The moment of victory was a fragile veneer over a deeper truth. The triumph could be the beginning of chaos if the seeds of doubt and ambition took root and grew. The initial euphoria faded, leaving a bitter aftertaste that gnawed at the edges of his mind, a reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the horizon. The other legions had their own stories of triumph and sacrifice, but beneath their proud banners, whispers of ambition stirred. For some, Ullanor was merely a stepping stone. For others, it was a calling to challenge the very foundation of Emperor's reign. Across the fringes of the battlefield, Rogel Dorn stood stoically, watching the aftermath unfold. His fortress of the Imperial Fists remained resolute amid the chaos, their bricks and chains of tradition a sign of unbreakable resolve. Dorn's gaze was measured and deep. He saw beyond the fragments of victory to the risks of complacency. Peace was a delicate thing, fragile as the bones of those fallen, yet often more dangerous than war itself. His silent prayers were for vigilance, that the unity forged here would withstand the greater storms to come. Meanwhile, Angron's berserkers, the World Eaters, reveled in their blood-fueled chaos. Their screams and taunts echoed like the howling of a crazed beast, slaughtering any who dared stand before them. Angron himself, shrouded beneath the crimson mask of rage, was a living embodiment of fury made flesh. Every kill was a testament to his wrath, an unquenchable fire that threatened to consume even the righteous. In the distant command chambers, the Emperor's gaze lingered, cold, calculating, and inscrutable. The victory at Ullanor was sweet, yet bitter truths lay beneath it. His voice, carried in silent thought through the bonds of the webway and the warp, was a prayer and a warning. This victory laid the foundation, yet it also heralded the storm on the horizon. The galaxy's greatest war was only just beginning, and the peril was not solely from without. In the shadows of the shattered world, emissaries moved, politicians, preachers, and scheming warlords, each seeking to bend the triumph to their will. Ambitions bloomed like weeds beneath the bright banners of unity, whispering promises of power, of salvation, of betrayal. The mighty and the humble alike felt the tide rising, a tide that could carry them to salvation or drown them in chaos. As the dawn's light spilled across the battered surface, the victory was palpable, yet it echoed with the silent toll of sacrifices made and future betrayals. The galaxy was scarred, the great machine of the Imperium creaking under its own weight. The victory was a beacon, but one flickering amidst the looming shadows. For every hero who had fallen, for every hope raised on shattered worlds, a shadow grew. A shadow that would darken many more days before the light could finally be restored or forever snuffed out. The stars bore witness, silent and eternal, as Ullanor's ashes cooled beneath the sky that saw the birth of legends and the end of innocence. The great cycle spun onward, noble, tragic, and unyieldingly mythic. The twilight of Ullanor's victory was not merely the quiet after battle. It was the turning of tides, hidden beneath veils of ceremony and whispered counsel. Within the grand halls of the Imperial encampment, the triumphant Legiones Astartes gathered beneath banners stained with the dust and blood of countless foes. Their voices, though raised in hymns of triumph, held undertones of unease, a discordant hymn beneath the glory of conquest. The great amphitheaters echoed with the solemn rites of the Mechanicum and the liturgical praises of the Ecclesiarchy, each seeking to bind the wounds of body and spirit with sacred ritual. At the heart of these proceedings, Horus Lupercal's presence was both crown and chain. His status as War Master was revered, yet the weight it bore pressed unseen beneath the gleaming armor. His council was attended by the greatest among the Primarchs: Rogel Dorn, steadfast as stone; Lorgar, the word-bearer, whose faith burned with peculiar zeal; Angron, the feral fury of the World Eaters, eyes glittering with restless madness; and others, each carrying burdens of loyalty, ambition, or hidden dissent. Their conversations, veiled in the language of diplomacy and honor, masked fires smoldering beneath, a perilous dance of alliance and suspicion. Rogel Dorn spoke with measured gravity, his words a bulwark against the currents threatening to erode the hard-won unity. The Emperor's vision is our shield. We must not allow fleeting shadows to fracture what blood and purpose have bound. His gaze, unyielding as adamantium, swept the gathered lords of war. Our strength lies not in conquest alone, but in the unbreakable brotherhood forged beneath the light of the Emperor. Yet, from the shadows of reverence, Lorgar's voice rose soft and potent, weaving a different melody. Faith is the true foundation, brother. It grants purpose beyond the battlefield, a light to guide the lost in this vast and uncaring void. The whispers of the warp grow louder. We must listen, not only with ears but with hearts, open and humble. Horus listened, the flicker of a smile, ghosting across lips that bore both hope and burden. The counsel was wise, yet beneath it, doubt gnawed, subtle, insidious. The victories of Ullanor had elevated him, yet pride, the oldest poison, crept quietly into his heart. A relentless question echoed in his mind. Could the unity of the Imperium be maintained, or was it already fractured beyond repair? Far from the shining councils, Angron raged still, unbound fury incarnate. His words came bruised and sharp, a tempest threatening to shatter the fragile accord. We fight and bleed, yet what of loyalty? The true war is not with Xenos, but with those who would bind us to chains forged of false duty. His voice was an echo of wrath and pain, a herald of the violent storms soon to come. Beyond these mortal concerns, the invisible tides of the warp shifted. The veil between worlds thinned, and unseen eyes watched with hunger and cunning. The battle-scarred heroes and lords of war stood at the precipice of fate, unaware how swiftly the threads of trust would unravel. The whispers of the false gods, voices of corruption, wrapped in silver lies, descended like a plague upon the hearts once most steadfast. As the planet healed slowly from fire and blood, so too did the bonds of brotherhood begin to fray, their unraveling destined to rend the galaxy in a cataclysm of light and shadow. The triumph at Ullanor would be remembered not only as a victory, but as the prologue to an epic tragedy, a saga of pride, faith, and betrayal. And so beneath the vaulted heavens, the great wheel of fate turned inexorably onward. The victorious legions raised their banners high, yet even in their exaltation, the cold winds of destiny whispered caution, that no victory is final, no brotherhood eternal. The fire of war had not yet cooled within the hearts of the Primarchs when the shadows began to stir. Beneath the veneer of victory at Ullanor, subtle fractures spread like poison, invisible yet inexorable. Horus, radiant and burdened, felt the shift with the keen perception of a warrior born to command. The echoes of whispered dissent and unseen promises teased the edges of his resolve. The triumph was hollow in moments, light cast against encroaching darkness, a fragile beacon flickering amid gathering storms. In the solitude of his chambers, Horus wrestled with the growing tumult within his soul. He was no longer merely the Emperor's favored son, but a lord of men and fate wrought in iron and fire. Pride sat heavy on his shoulders like woven ceramite, and ambition, once a quiet ember, had become a roaring blaze, tempered by shadows he dared not fully name. His reflection in the polished helm was fractured, as the future before him, one path bathed in light and order, the other swallowed by chaos and ruin. Rogel Dorn, the eternal sentinel, bore a stoic defiance against such tides. His vision of loyalty was absolute, to the Emperor, to mankind, and to the bond of brotherhood forged in blood and battle. Yet even a fortress might crack unseen. Dorn's thoughts were a granite resolve, but did not escape the gnawing realization that the greatest peril was not upon the fields of war, but lurking within the hearts of his brothers. His vigilance was a silent prayer, that unity could withstand the tempests yet to break. In the shadowed halls distant from Dorn's unyielding watch, Lorgar, the word-bearer, nurtured a secret flame. His faith had always burned with a fervor beyond the tenets of the Imperium, a calling as ancient as the warp itself. The events at Ullanor had deepened his conviction that the Emperor's vision was incomplete, that salvation might demand sacrifices unspoken and paths forbidden. With swelling zeal, Lorgar began to delve beyond sacred rites into the mysteries whispered by the warp's dark embrace, courting powers both terrible and seductive. Meanwhile, Angron's rage festered like a wound left unhealed. The World Eater's blood-soaked frenzy was a war unto itself, its madness a mirror to the internal chaos threatening to consume the Legion's whole. Angron's fury was not just for the enemies on the field, but a tempest born of betrayal, isolation, and the cruel irony of sorrow hidden beneath the thrill of slaughter. Each victory felt tainted, a Pyrrhic testament to a future steeped in pain and oblivion, beyond mortal realm and mortal grief. the Chaos Gods watched with eternal hunger. In the twisting pathways of the Imperium, their whispers slithered into dreams and doubts, seeding corruption with a serpent's patience. The false gods, enigmatic, merciless, spoke promises wrapped in silk and flame, reaching for those whose faith faltered or ambition burned too bright. Their grasp was subtle at first, a look, a doubt, a secret unease, a creeping shadow against the bright banners of the Imperium. As the legions prepared to march onward, the cleaving fate of brotherhood and betrayal wove ever tighter. The triumph at Ullanor was not the crescendo, but the quiet movement before the storm, a moment pregnant with glory and doom. For in the heart of victory lay the seeds of ruin, and even the brightest light might be devoured by the encroaching dark. And beneath the ever-watchful stars, the great tragedy of the Heresy awaited its hour, a saga of shattered bonds, fallen gods, and the relentless struggle for mankind's soul. Horus stood before the abyss of his own making, the weight of empire pressing like night-black armor upon his soul. The chamber was thick with silence, save for the faint hum of arcane machinery and the distant echoes of a war that, while won, had left scars no ceramite could hide. In the cold reflection of his helm's polished visor, he saw not just the visage of a war master, but a man caught between the impossible demands of loyalty and the firestorm of ambition that threatened to consume him whole. His thoughts were a tempest, memory and prophecy intertwined like serpents coiled about a blade. The faces of brotherhood haunted him, the stalwart Dorn, whose granite spirit turned buttress in defense, Lorgar, whose faith burned with a different light, one that cast long shadows, Angron, the rage incarnate, tearing at chains that none but himself could perceive. Horus understood then that unity was a fragile hail, hammered on the anvils of loyalty and doubt alike. The triumph at Ullanor was a crown wrought in flame, but the fire that forged it was uneven, licking at the seams, threatening to crack the very foundation of the Imperium. As Horus paced the length of his sanctum, the echo of distant voices, the murmurs of generals, the prayers of chaplains, the clandestine prayers of the corrupted, rose like a dissonant chorus. Each voice was a thread pulling at the tapestry of his faith, each word a shadow beneath the veneer of victory. He felt the eyes of the galaxy upon him, not as a boy favored by the Emperor, but as a god of war and fate. The weight of command was a crucible, testing and reshaping all it touched. His heart burned with a flame both exalted and accursed. Was he the herald of mankind's salvation, or the harbinger of its downfall? The line was as thin as a razor's edge, and he balanced upon it like a soul condemned. Beneath the veneer of resolve, doubt took root, not weakness, but the seed of change. Horus contemplated the whispered promises of power beyond the light, the subtle allure of paths forbidden but potent. The darkness called in secret tongues, murmuring of freedom from chains, of destiny forged not by edict, but by will. In that silent struggle, the War Master found himself both prisoner and warden of his own fate. And yet, amid the shadows, a faint glimmer endured, the hope that unity might yet prevail, that brotherhood would not break beneath the weight of pride and sorrow. The Emperor's light was distant, but not extinguished. Horus's final prayer was a vow that whatever path he chose, it would be walked with the honor of those who had fallen, with the memory of the countless voices that had whispered faith and courage upon Ullanor's bloodied fields. The fate of the Imperium hung poised, a fragile balance between glory and ruin, as the stars observed in silence. Eternal and unyielding, the chamber was vast and shadowed, its walls etched with the silent prayers and victories of 1,000 battles. Yet none so fraught as those now weighing upon Horus Lupercal's shoulders. He stood before the polished glass of his war throne's observation deck, looking out over the blood-scarred plains of Ullanor, once verdant, now a testament to ruin and sacrifice. The jagged wreckage of shattered Xenos war engines and broken banners fluttered weakly beneath a cold dawn. It was a landscape carved from fire and iron, a crucible in which the destinies of gods and men had been forged and fractured alike. Horus's mind was tempestuous, torn asunder by the fierce tide of past deeds and ominous portents. Each breath was heavy with the weight of command, an invisible yoke that bent the proudest of backs. He reflected upon the paths that had led him here, from the distant cradle of his lost cradle world to the apex of mankind's might. The War Master of the Great Crusade. He was both scion and sovereign, warrior and shepherd, a figure illuminated by glory yet shadowed by doubt. In the quiet terror of this hour, the faces of his brothers rose before him like phantoms, etched with purpose and conflict. Rogel Dorn, the eternal sentinel, whose unshakable will was a rock against the ever-encroaching darkness. Uncertain, yet unwavering. Lorgar, the word-bearer, whose faith burned not only with the light of the Emperor, but with something older, more dangerous, a hunger that grew in the wart's whispered dreams. Angron, the furious, the broken berserker king of the World Eaters, burning with rage and madness beyond the reach of reason. Each bore a piece of the Imperium's soul within them, and each carried secrets and shadows that threatened to rend the fabric of brotherhood. The triumph at Ullanor was a clarion moment, victory for the Imperium writ large, a testament to mankind's might and the War Master's command. But it was also the evening star heralding the coming storm. Horus felt it like a chill beneath the warmth of his triumph, a dissonance that gnawed at the edges of his certainty. The empire he fought to build was fragile, a delicate edifice forged of loyalty and blood, yet threatened by ambition, pride, and the subtle illusions whispered by the warp. The fire of ambition blazed fiercely within him, tempered by a growing storm of unease. The desire to unite the galaxy beneath the Emperor's vision warred with an unsettling pull toward paths less trod, roads lined with shadow and whispered promises of freedom from chains unseen. This duality soured his joy with bitterness, his triumph with doubt. Horus knew well the peril of pride. The serpent coiled in waiting beneath the laurels of victory as he paced the length of his sanctum. The ambient light flickered, casting shifting shadows that seemed to mimic the turmoil within. The distant murmurs of his closest confidants filtered through closed doors, brothers bound by oath and fellowship, yet strangers in the crucible of power. Their voices were heavy with counsel and concern, each word a thread in the complex tapestry of allegiance and intrigue. Sire came a measured voice, and Erebus, his most trusted chamberlain of the word-bearers, stepped from the shadows like a wraith, born of smoke and worship. His eyes glittered with a zeal that was as dangerous as it was devout. The victory at Ullanor is but a breath in the galaxy's endless storm. There are forces beyond our sight stirring, and the Emperor's vision, it may yet be incomplete. Horus regarded Erebus silently, sensing the subtle currents beneath his words, an undercurrent of something darker, a hint of sedition wrapped in piety. Speak plainly, Erebus, what burdens you so? The chamberlain knelt, his voice a whisper now. There are truths that the Emperor hides, secrets too perilous to reveal. The path to salvation may demand sacrifices that pain the soul and strain the bonds of loyalty. There are powers awaiting the moment to offer mankind a new dawn, if only we have the courage to grasp it. The War Master's jaw clenched. Such thoughts were forbidden, heresy veiled in the garb of faith. Yet there was a part of him, a shadow-bound part, that understood the yearning behind the words. Was the Emperor's divine plan flawless, or were cracks already torn in the foundation of this vast empire? Beyond Erebus's counsel lay the ever-tensioned relationship with other Primarchs and legions. Horus's mind conjured the stoic figure of Rogel Dorn, whose lifelong vigilance was both salvation and caution. Dorn's loyalty was ironclad, yet his will was unyielding to the point of inflexibility, and Horus feared it might one day drive irreparable wedges between brothers. Dorn's vision was unclouded. Strength through discipline and defense, a wall against the chaos that threatened from within and without. Horus respected him, yet he knew that such unwavering righteousness could break as easily as it held. Then there was Angron, the furious tempest barely held at bay. A storm wreaking havoc even among allies. Horus felt the pull of Angron's rage, both a tool and a threat, for the wildfire of fury could consume friend and foe alike. The brutality of the World Eaters was a reflection of the darkest part of war, a reminder that the blood calling for vengeance might drown the very soul of the Imperium. Lorgar, however, was the most troubling thread, his relentless zeal a double-edged sword. His worship of the Emperor had gone beyond obedience into a fanatic devotion, bordering on the mystical. And the events of Ullanor had fanned the flames of this devotion into a consuming fire. Lorgar's secret communion with the entities lurking beyond reality's veil marked the first tremors of a storm that would shatter worlds and souls alike. Horus saw the Word-bearer's faith as a burning mirror, illuminating the darkness, but also inviting it. And underlying all was the ever-present hunger of the Chaos Gods, unseen yet palpably close. Their whispers, soft as silk but sharp as razors, penetrated the hearts of the mighty and low alike. They marred the clarity of victory with doubt and temptation, weaving threads of corruption that would grow until the bonds of brotherhood became chains of betrayal. In that lonely expanse, a domain ruled by doubts and destiny, Horus made a silent vow. The path ahead was shrouded and perilous, but he would walk it with the courage of those who had fallen and the ambition to create a future worthy of the Emperor's dream, or one born of fire and shadow. For in the grand design of the cosmos, the triumph of Ullanor was but the first note in a dirge, a song of glory, of loss, and of the relentless, tragic fall of gods. In the dim sanctum, hidden deep within the labyrinthine heart of the War Master's flagship, the Whisperer's Veil, a small gathering of figures cloaked in shadow convened. The chamber was suffused with an almost reverent silence, pierced only by the faint hum of arcane machinery and the soft rustle of tabards, embroidered with both honor and secrecy. Here, in this secret council, the future of the Imperium was being quietly unmade. Horus stood at the center, a towering figure of iron and ambition, his eyes alight with the twin fires of hope and doubt. Around him, a select circle of trusted brothers, few in number but vast in influence, watched and listened, each carrying the weight of conflicted loyalties and whispered doubts. Erebus, ever the insidious herald of hidden truths, regarded Horus with fervent intensity, his posture at once submissive and knowing. Cor Farron, the enigmatic leader of the Word-Bearer's inner cult, exuded a calm menace beneath his silken robes. Lorgar, Primarch, and Prophet bore a gaze alive with fervor, as if communing with forces beyond mortal ken. "We stand at the precipice, brother," Erebus intoned, voice low but carrying the gravity of doom. "The Emperor's light, though bright, blinds us to the shadow at its edge. The galaxy is fracturing under the weight of ideals imposed rather than embraced. To maintain unity, to ensure salvation, sacrifices must be made, not in blood alone." But Horus's gaze was unwavering, a maelstrom of contemplation crossing his features. "Speak plainly. What path do you propose, Erebus? To challenge the Maker himself is heresy, yet to ignore the rot within is to doom us all." Cor Farron stepped forward, his voice smooth as velvet and sharp as a blade. "The warp calls to those burdened by chains, brother. It grants power without shackles, freedom beyond decree. The Emperor's vision, though noble, is a cage forged of dogma and pride. To grasp true salvation, we must embrace the darkness, not as fools, but as masters." The room's air thickened with unspoken tension, the fine line between reverence and rebellion blurring. Horus's hands clenched, yet within him a dark flame flickered, an ember of a belief that greatness required more than obedience. Lorgar, his tone both fervent and sorrowful, added, "We have glimpsed the truths the Emperor shuns. To deny the powers of the warp is to deny the very source of creation and destruction. Faith, brother, must evolve or perish. Let us be architects of mankind's destiny, not mere footnotes in a god's plan." The discussion spiraled into the depths of ideology and destiny. Loyalty versus pragmatism, faith versus power. Horus felt the tide of conviction stirring within his soul, a paradoxical hunger for both order and liberation. He was no longer simply the Emperor's sword, but a man poised to strike where angels feared. Yet outside this chamber, the legions themselves began to stir with unrest. Whispers of distrust slithered through the ranks like poison. The steadfast resolve of the Imperial fists clashed with the feral savagery of the World Eaters. Dorn's unyielding discipline bred frustration among those who favored boldness. Angron's tide of fury threatened to engulf all semblance of order. The word-bearer's secret cult sowed seeds of doubt and fanaticism, their faith growing ever darker. Between brothers once united in purpose, fissures appeared, small, almost imperceptible, yet destined to widen. Commands questioned in silence, eyes averted at shared councils, loyalty tested by ambition and fear. The bonds of brotherhood strained beneath the weight of competing visions for mankind's future. And in the void beyond, the Chaos Gods smiled, silent observers of a slow unraveling, their tendrils weaving ever deeper into mortal hearts. The triumph at Ullanor had lit a beacon, yes, but it was a flame casting shadows long and terrible. The warm glow of victory now belied the cold whispers of betrayal that spread unseen. Horus closed his eyes, the murmurs of his brothers and the seductions of the warp mingling in a tempest of soul and will. The path before him was shrouded, a crossing of light and darkness, where every choice bore the weight of worlds. He was a god among men, yet no god was immune to the fall. The stars above Ullanor watched, cold and endless, as the great wheel of fate spun on, indifferent to the glory and tragedy below. The battlefields, once ablaze with the fury of war and the cries of brothers united, now lay silent beneath a shroud of smoke and sorrow. The triumph was won, the banners raised, but the cost, etched deep in bone, spirit, and shattered trust, would echo through the ages yet to come. Horus stood alone upon the shattered prow of his war machine, the cold wind whispering in his ears like the void itself. Around him, the legions gathered in uncertain silence, their triumph weighed down by the heavy shadows that victory could not dispel. The faces of his brothers, a kaleidoscope of honor, fury, faith, and burgeoning doubt, haunted him still. They were no longer merely primarchs of man's grand crusade, but the architects of a future trembling on the knife's edge between salvation and ruin. The path he had chosen was neither light nor dark, but a twilight forged in fire and shadow. Horus embraced his ambition, not as heresy, but as the burden of a warrior who must bear the cross of his vision alone. The whispered promises of power and freedom, once faint and elusive, now burned bright within him, the flame that would light the way or consume all in its consuming blaze. Yet even as the darkness waited in patient hunger, there remained a glimmer, a fragile, trembling hope that the bonds of brotherhood might yet endure. For though the seeds of betrayal were sown deep, the blood of those who had fallen was not spilled in vain. Who had fallen was not spilled in vain. Their sacrifices were hymns that would echo beyond the stars, a testament to the indomitable spirit of mankind. And so, as the cold dawn bled into the skies of Ullanor, Horus lifted his blade high, a symbol not only of conquest, but of a destiny writ large in blood and fate. The legions roared in solemn affirmation, a chorus of faith and fury united beneath a banner that still bore the Emperor's light, dim but unbroken. The triumph at Ullanor was not the end, but the beginning, the prologue to a saga of shattered gods and fallen empires, of faith shattered and reforged in war's relentless crucible. It was the moment when legends were born and curses whispered, where the future of mankind hung suspended in the balance. And in the silence that followed, beneath the watchful eyes of cold stars, only one truth endured, that even in glory, the echo of loss is eternal, and no light can shine forever unblemished.